in our last class we have discussed about the block 1, and we have already completed our discussion regarding the unit 1, unit 2 and unit 3, and today we shall discuss about the unit 4, that is block 1 unit 4 of 102, that leads with the or that deals with the principle of fundamental rights of the citizens. And under this chapter we shall have to discuss regarding the following points, that is introductions to the political science, that is your fundamental rights, then historical background of the fundamental rights, that means how the fundamental rights became incorporated in the constitutions and what are the different steps on behalf of which the fundamental right came into existence. So my point of argument is that the different then salient feature of the fundamental rights, third point of our discussion, then is your different fundamental rights, that is right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitations, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, and last but not the least, that is right to constitutional remedies. And fifth point, that is basic structure, or how the basic structure or fundamental rights is known as the incorporated in the basic structure of the constitutions. Then your restriction on the fundamental right, that means though it is fundamental in nature, still then there are certain restrictions put forth whenever there is the necessity of the time and situations. Then last but not the least, that is conclusion. So first point we shall have to discuss regarding this, that is your topic, that is introductions. That means in introductions we know about the, that is your, what is fundamental right, and we have already discussed in the our last classes regarding the preamble of the constitutions about the different provisions of the constitutions, that is, as I have already told you, that is we the people of India, that is we the people of India having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, that is justice, social, economic, political, equality of status and of opportunity to promote them among them all. That is your fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and unity and integrity of nation. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, we hereby adopt an act and give to ourselves this Constitution. This is the incorporated in our preamble, and this justify that the securing freedom and equality of justice, dignity of the citizens, regarding the different principle of the constitutions incorporated in the constitutions, that is directive principle of state policy. So as you know, fundamental rights, it is one of the important principle of our constitutions. Fundamental in the sense that these rights are necessity, or these rights are most important for the survival or for the development of a particular individual. So this is the reason why this is fundamental in nature. That means there are some portion of the Indian constitutions, they are maybe that is your justiciable in the court of law, and if anybody violates the principle enumerated in that part of the constitutions, we may move directly to the court of law for the implementation. And fundamental rights comes under the provision, that is, if anybody violates the fundamental rights, then one can move to the court for the implementation of his and her fundamental right. যদি কোনসি ব্যক্তি তার मौलिक अधिकार जदि क्षुण्ण होउछि then the person has to move to the court directly for the implementations of the fundamental right. मौलिक अधिकार लागू करबा पय से कोन करबो जे ना से कोर्ट को डायरेक्टली अप्रोच करबो. So and this part that is the reason why fundamental rights are fundamental in nature and they are justiciable in the court of law, whereas that is your directive principle of state policy. This is one of the important provision of the Constitution of India, which are enumerated in the Part 4th of the Indian Constitutions. No doubt, fundamental rights are enumerated in the Part 3rd of the Indian Constitution, whereas the directive principle of state policy, they are enumerated in the Part 4th of the Constitutions, and they are non-justiciable in the court of law. That means if anybody violates the principle of the enumerated in the directive principle of state policy, then we cannot move to the court for the implementation of the directive principle of state policy. कहवा अर्थ है जे जदि कौन व्यक्ति आमर मौलिक अधिकार को क्षुण्ण करुच्ची ताहले आमे तार इम्प्लीमेंटेशन पाई डायरेक्टली आमे कोर्ट को जीवा, किंतु जदि कौन व्यक्ति डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल को वायोलेट करुच्ची देन it cannot be justiciable in the court of law. That means court should not hear any matter related to the directive principle of state policy. That means if somebody violates also, we cannot bound him to obey the principle laid down in the directive principle of state policy. Okay. So fundamental rights, that is the reason why fundamental in nature and directive principle are not non-justiciable in the court of law. The second point of discussion is historical background. How the Constitution of India or how the fundamental rights has its historical background, how incorporated in the Constitution. So that is Indian National Congress wanted the fundamental rights and they wanted that the fundamental rights are to be enjoyed by the people of India or the citizens of India as it was enjoyed by the people of British. And in the year 1895, the constitutional bill in 1895, this bill sought to provide right to the Indians for that is your free speech, imprisonment, and competent authority and free state educations. So in this way, what happened in historical background, the developments were took place in India. They demanded or demand was made by the Indian National Congress that the members of the Indian National Congress through the different resolutions like Commonwealth of that is your India Bill 1925, then Nehru, as we have already discussed in our last class, Nehru Report 1928, then Sapru Report 1945, and the Subcommittee on Fundamental Rights. On these resolutions, by adopting different resolution on this, the makers, that is your members of the Indian National Congress, they incorporated the idea of the fundamental right of the Indian Constitution, and they include the fundamental right, and they are justiciable in the court of law. So let us discuss how the historical development took place in the incorporation of the fundamental right in the Constitution. First, that is the Commonwealth of India Bill 1925. What happened? The Commonwealth of India Bill demanded 7 fundamental rights for the India. Among these rights, they included individual liberty, freedom of conscience, free expressions of opinion, free assembly, and equality before law. These are the 7 fundamental rights they demanded, or the Commonwealth of India Bill demanded. That means liberty, individual liberty. That means freedom of the individual. Then freedom of conscience. That means to think. Free or freedom of expressions of opinion, that means you are free to give your opinion on any matter. Then free of assemble, that means formation of association, assembly. And then is your equality before that, that means equal treatment in equality before law should be maintained irrespective of their caste, color, creed, sex, and religion. These 7 important principle or the rights, fundamental rights, are provided importance by the Commonwealth of India Bill in the year 1925. Then there is Nehru Report. As I have already discussed in our, or we have already discussed in our last classes, the Nehru Report. That means it was the chairman of the Nehru committee was Motilal Nehru. That is the reason why it is regarded as the Nehru Report. And in the Nehru Report, the fundamental right being given priority. And in the year the Congress Party in Karachi resolutions highlighted the need of the that is your fundamental rights and exploitation of masses and make economic freedom intertwined with the political freedom. And they suggested that the suitable legislation should make safeguard to the interest of the working classes. These things given priority in the Nehru Report of 1928. They stated that, and this resolution was taken in the year 1931 in Karachi resolutions, and passed a resolution with regard to the, that is your political freedom, or with regard to the, that is your safeguard of the interest of working classes. These things were given priority in the Nehru Report. Then is your Sapru Report. The Sapru Report was assigned as a task of doing that is your, and this Sapru Report committee consists of 30 members. There are 30 members in Sapru committee, and it was known as Sapru committee. And after the name of the chairman is chairman of the Sapru committee is Tej Bahadur Sapru. The chairman of the Sapru committee is Tej Bahadur Sapru. That is the reason why it was known as the Sapru committee, because at that time the Tej Bahadur Sapru was an eminent lawyer of India, and this report was published in the year 1945. And the Sapru committee is distinguished for making 2 suggestions about the rights. One is made distinctions between justiciable right and non-justiciable rights, and to suggest the rights of minority must be protested. That means minority rights must be given protection, and this Sapru committee make distinctions between the, that is your justiciable rights and non-justiciable right. Justiciable right means those rights are justiciable rights for which, or for any violation of those rights, we can move directly to the court for the implementations. But in case of, that is your non-justiciable rights, we cannot move to the court for the implementation of the rights. So this is called the difference between the justiciable and non-justiciable. And then there is the subcommittee on the fundamental rights. And the subcommittee on the fundamental rights, they give priority to the fundamental rights of minority and tribal and excluded area. They give priority to the minority, fundamental rights of the minority and excluded area and the tribals people. So it was headed by the, that is your Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and this committee was divided into subcommittee, and one subcommittee was on fundamental right, and other subcommittee was on the, that is your headed by the J.B. Kripalani, and the committee representations of, that is included in the fundamental right are justiciable in the court of law, or in the nature of justiciable. So the suggestions of the rights of subcommittee were incorporated in the Part 3 of the Indian Constitution, and after where it was discussed in the Constituent Assembly to incorporate it in the Part 3 of the Indian Constitution, and As you know, the part third of the Indian Constitution is particularly deals with the fundamental rights, and they are justiciable in the court of law. That means anybody which should violates the fundamental right of the any people, that means the person has the right to move directly to the court of law. ବୁଝି ହଉଛି? ବୁଝି ହଉଛି ନା ନାହିଁ?
ଆଜ୍ଞା।
So my point of argument is that means subcommittee represents the that is your incorporation of fundamental right in the part third of the Indian Constitution, which are justiciable in the court of law. That means anybody which violates the rules and regulations incorporated in the fundamental law, then we have to move directly to the court for the implementation of our fundamental right. Then is your that is salient feature of the fundamental right. Salient, what are the salient feature of the fundamental right? First and foremost salient feature of the fundamental right is all are equal before the law. That means all citizens are treated as equal, irrespective of their caste, color, creed, sex, religion, and no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, and property, except that is your in accordance with the law. Or that means in India there is a difference, that is the difference between the Bill of Rights of America and the Bill of Fundamental Rights of India. That is in case of America, it was stated that if anybody violates the rules and regulations enumerated in the fundamental, that is your Bill of Rights, then that lead to the due process of law. And here in case of India, what happened? It is procedure established by law. Say for an example, what is the difference between due process of law and the procedure established by law? Due process of law means in America, what happened? Basically, they are ruled by the conventions, custom, traditions. So if there is law is made by the Parliament of the America, then whether it becomes an act or not, if there is any disagreement, then it will move for the implementation. Then if there is any disagreement, then Supreme Court will have the right to say that whether it has a due process of law or not. But in case of India, what happened? It will be regarded as the procedure established by law. So the difference is that due process of law and the procedure established by law. Procedure established by law means what is the procedure to make a law in India. If I am giving you the example, if a law is passes in both the houses of the Parliament and receive the presidential assent, then it may be declared as law. That means, say for an example, if in case of India a law is passed to kill the that is your children below the 18 years, then it is passed in the that is your constitution of that is your procedure established by law. If it receives the assent of the president, then it becomes an act. But in case of America, what would happen? Whether this should be a law or not in previous, that it can be looked after, then it came into becomes an act. And that is the rigidityness of the constitution of the America. And that is the basic difference between the Bill of Rights of the America and the fundamental right of the India. So this is the basic, that is your principle, and this is the first principle, that all are equal before the law. That means irrespective of all are should be treated as equal, and no person shall be deprived of his life, liberty, and property except that is your procedure established by law or in accordance with law. Second important thing, that is your salient feature of the fundamental rights, is that minorities are allowed to protect and conserve their language, scripts, and culture. That means the protection of the language, scripts, and culture is the basic salient feature of the fundamental right. That means, as you know, India is a land of diversity. ଭାରତର ଲୋକ ସଂଖ୍ୟା that constitute of the many sections of the populations. And here in India or in Indian territory, we found the people belonging to different community. There are Sikhs, there are Muslims, there are Christians, there are Hindus. So there are so many communities. They reside in the territory of India, and we know that it is a land of the diversity. So here the salient feature of the fundamental rights says that this community, they have their right to protection of language, script, and culture, because in India there are people belonging to different culture. They have people belonging to different areas, speaks different language. Could you follow my point?
Yes, sir.
So they have to protect, or protection has to be given to that is conservation of this language, script, and culture. That is also that is one thing here I must say that is Article 17 of the Indian Constitution, which will deals with the abolition of the untouchability. This is also one of the that is your salient feature of the Indian Constitution, fundamental rights. Then Article 15, Clause 2, that means use of shop, restaurant, that is your bathing ghats, well, roads. These protections are given by the that is your fundamental rights. Then Article 23 of the Indian Constitution, which prohibits the forced labor. That means equality should be maintained irrespective of the caste, color, creed, sex, religion, place of birth, and is your whatever you may say. Equal, the principle of equality is given more priority in the fundamental rights. Then the provision of the judicial review and constitutional remedy under Article 32 of the Indian Constitution. These are also comes under the that is your salient feature of the Constitution of India. So fundamental rights are both natural and legal. That means without fundamental rights, we cannot think for the development of the community. So that is the reason why it is fundamental in nature. And next point of our discussion is that is your comes under that is different fundamental rights, or the that is your fundamental right provided in the Constitution of India in the nature of that is your right to equality from the Article 14 to 18, and there are 6 fundamental rights. As initially it was 7 in the constitutions, but in accordance with the provision of the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act 1978, it was declared as the 6th fundamental right, and right to property under Article 31 is abolished from the fundamental right. So now the right to property is become the that is your civil right. So I mean to say that the different fundamental right that is provided in the Constitution of India, that is they are in 6 in nature, and first is right to equality. Right to equality consists of from Article 14 to 18. Write it down from Article 14 to 18. And right to freedom from Article 19 to 22. Then your right against exploitations 23 and 24. Then there is your right to freedom of religion from Article 25 to 28. Then is your cultural and educational right, Article 29 and 30. And at last, that is right to constitutional remedy under Article 32. So let us discuss what are the provisions enumerated in the fundamental rights from Article 14 to 32. That means except 31, that is right to property is not a fundamental right, now it is a legal right. So under Article 14, the Constitution of India provides equality before law. That means equal treatment to each and every citizen, as I have already told you that is equality before law. And Article 15 provides that it prohibits discrimination on the ground of the religion. That means there shall not be made, or we shall not make any discrimination on the grounds of the religion. Then Article 16, equal opportunity in case of the public employment. That means each and every section of the society should be given equal opportunity for the public offices, or with regard to the in case of the public employment. That means irrespective of their caste, color, creed, sex, religion, place of birth, they have the equal opportunity to put for themselves or compete for the public offices or public employment. And as already I have told you regarding Article 70, it abolishes the untouchability to maintain equality among the citizen of the country. Then there is under Article 18, that means no title other than military or educational should be provided to the citizen of India. As you know that in case of the title, there are some military titles provided to the citizen of India like colonel, like lieutenant, but other titles like king, these titles should not be given to the anybody other than the educational and the military or the academic, rather you may see. So these are the some of the articles that comes under the from Article 14 to 18, right to equality. That means equality should be provided, or the provision is to maintain equality among all the citizens of the country. That means they are should be treated as equal in the eye of law, and it also prohibits the discrimination in terms of the restriction of any person to access any shop, public restaurant, hotel, place, and public entertainment, wells, tanks. These are some of the, that means no doubt the principle of equality is provided in the Constitution of India. Still then there is disequilibrium or not? বুঝি পারছো না নাই? No doubt there is equality, or the principle of equality is there. Still then there is disequilibrium. How it will know? That means that is priority should be given to the SC and ST community. Priority should be given to the backward classes of the India. If on the one hand you are saying that is equality is the principle, then on the other hand you are giving the priority and matter of that is your educations in each and every year. But there are certain provisions which are eliminated because this section in that time, while that is your in the formation of the constitutions, at that time these sections were not so much developed. That is the reason to make equality or equal status of the community, different community, they give a special status to the this, that is your marginalized sections, that is SC and ST community and the backward classes of the people of India. So whatever it may be, from under Article 14 to 18, equality or the right to equality is provided to the citizen of India. Then right to freedom. Right to freedom comes under the Article 19 to 22. That means, and under this there are various types of freedom were provided to the people of India. And first, that is freedom of speech and expression. Under Article 19, there are so many freedoms were provided to the people of India, and under Article 19, freedom of speech and expression is provided. No doubt there is freedom of speech and expression, but can we say, can we speak or anything whatever we may like? We cannot, because there are certain restrictions, because which should not go against the anybody's interest. That means freedom of speech means the main concern is the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India. That means whatever in the Constitution of India there is the provision for the, that is your freedom of speech and expressions, and its main concern is to the interest of the sovereignty and integrity of India, to the security, that is your security of India or states. and friendly relation among the other foreign states. Still then, this freedom of speech should not interfere or infringe upon the other right or expression, whatever we may express, which should not violate the other's right. Then there is freedom to assemble peaceably and without arms. That means formation of that is your freedom to assemble peaceably and without arms. We must have the freedom to assemble. Assemble মানে একত্রিত হেবা. Peacefully we can assemble together and without arm. Without arm means without any arms. That is your অস্ত্র শস্ত্র বিনা ଆମେ ସଂଘବଦ୍ଧ ହେଇପାରିବା, କିନ୍ତୁ କଥା ହେଲା ଯେ we cannot or this cannot be go against the sovereignty or unity and integrity of nations, as it was already been stated in the preamble of the Constitution. So next point is that the formation of association and union. The Constitution of India under Article 19 also provides that formation of association and union. That means it's qualify or while formulating the association and union, we should not formulate such an association which will infringe upon the sovereignty of the country or unity and integrity of nation. We have rights, no doubt, but it should not go against the sovereignty or unity and integrity of nations. Then is your next is to move freely throughout the territory of India. That means the citizens of India were provided with the rights of to move freely throughout the territory of India. But still then, you see, there is the area like prohibited area. Prohibited area thisi kinna nahi. ତମେ ଦେଖିଥିବ ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଜାଗାକୁ ଗଲେ that is your given that is your board is provided, this area is prohibited for the public entry. देखा जाए को ଜାଗାକୁ ଗଲେ ଦେଖିଛ କେବେ ଏମିତି?
ଆଜ୍ଞା,
that is no doubt we have the freedom free to move throughout the territory of India, but still then we have certain restrictions. We cannot move to those areas those were prohibited. Then is your reside and settle in any part of the country of India. We have the right to reside and settle in any part of the country of India, but still then we cannot make a house in the property of others. That means that is the violation of the others' rights. Okay. Then the Constitution of India provides to practice any profession or to carry out any business, trade or business. That means to practice any profession. Any profession माने कौन? ता माने हला जे तमे कौन नहीं कि that is your whatever available in the that is your eastern part of the that is your Odisha in the Bhubaneswar city. Then you may make that is your free sale of that is your charas and ganja. Can it be possible to practice that is your profession and business and you say this is my profession?
nahi sir.
It cannot be provided. No doubt there are the rights there are the rights were provided to practice any profession, but we should not interfere in the others' right, or we should not go against the unity and integrity of nation. ମାନେ କହିବାକୁ ଗଲେ ଦେଶର ସ୍ୱାଧୀନତା ଏବଂ ଅଖଣ୍ଡତାକୁ ସେଟା that means if you practice a profession which go against the humanity, ମଣିଷ ସମାଜର ବିପକ୍ଷରେ ଯଦି ଯାଉଛି ତାହେଲେ କଣ ହବ? That is the reason why we should not practice such a profession which should go against the humanity. ବୁଝିହେଲା? So here also under Article 19 provided that to practice any profession or to carry any occupation, trade or business, and this is provided in the Constitution of India or under fundamental rights. And then is your different freedom of rights were provided in under Article 20, 21 and 22. I am not going to the details because there is limitations of the time and we have to cover up 3 of the chapters. Then right against exploitations. Next right, that is comes under the article 23 and 24. That is article 23 prohibits the traffic in human beings and beggar. That means unpaid labor or similar forms of forced labor. Traffic in human being. Traffic ମାନେ କଣ ବୁଝୁଛ ଏବେ? Traffic in human beings ମାନେ
सर जो माने छोटो पिलांकू बाहर को सप्लाई कर दियंती किणा बिका कर दियंती
that is not human, that is forced labor or form of, that is your forced labor. Traffic in human being and beggar, that means human trafficking, that is called the that is one of the point what you have mentioned. Beggar, the principle of beggar should not be given important priority. So the exploitation, that means it should go against the principle of the humanity. That is the reason why the Constitution of India granted the rights against the exploitation under Article 23, and that prohibits the traffic in human being. Traffic ro role ta kono ଅଟକାଇ ଦେବା. ट्राफिक टा माने काना तुमे देखुथबो रोड रास्ता रे गले ट्राफिक रो रोल टा काना तुमको hurdles create करे. So that means human trafficking should not be provided. That prohibits the constitution. And beggar means that is your unpaid laborer, those who are not paid for their work, and other forms of forced labor. ଦେଖୁଥିବ ଆଜିକାଲି ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଜାଗାରେ ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଇଣ୍ଡଷ୍ଟ୍ରିରେ ଲୋକ ଗୁଡାକ କାମ କରୁଛନ୍ତି କିନ୍ତୁ ତାଙ୍କର ୱେଜ ଠିକ ଅନୁସାରେ ଦିଆଯାଉ ନାହିଁ. That should be prohibited. And according to Article 24, no child below the age of 14 shall be employed in factory, mines or any hazardous work. This exploitation, this is thing that this is one of also the type of the exploitation. That means they are not eligible to work, or the children will not eligible to work in the any hazardous factory because that cause furious diseases or that caused loss to the humanity. That is the reason why the no child below the age of the 14 shall be employed in factory, mines or any hazardous occupation. Hazardous means which should create problem for the human being. They should not be employed. Next is your freedom of religion. And under Article 25 of the Constitution of India, 25 to 28, that is freedom of religion is provided. That means under Article 25, freedom to practice, propagate any religion. Because as you know, India is a land of diversity, and the people of India, they have their own religion. Different community have their own religion. Different section of the population have their own religion, own faith and own belief, whatever reflected. That is your equality of status and of opportunity to promote among them all. Then that is liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith and worship. What is stated clearly in the reflected in the preamble of the constitutions. That is called, that is the reason where freedom to practice, propagate any religion. You have the choice. Because India is a land of diversity. Here the people belonging to various religions, various communities, they reside in the territory of India. That is the reason where, as we wanted a unity among the diversity, we have to provide the freedom to practice and propagate any religion. Because we have our sentiment, it deals with our, that is your religious sentiment, all these things. That is the reason where the Constitution of India under Article, that is your 25 of the Constitution, freedom is to provide it to propagate any religion. Then Article 26 also related to the religion, that means freedom to maintain public affairs subject to the public order, morality and the health. That means maintain public affairs. That means they have to maintain public affairs subject to the public order, morality and the health. This provides with under Article Part 3 of the Indian Constitution. That means they have to maintain their affairs, public order, they are subject to public order and morality and health. This means communities were given, different communities were given their priorities, or given not priority, given freedom to maintain public affairs. They are their own affairs, they have their own affair, they have their own subject of public order, different, that is your community. Then under Article 27, no person shall be compelled to pay tax for the promotion or maintenance of any particular religion. You are cannot be bound to pay tax for the promotion of any particular religion, but voluntarily you may pay also. Voluntarily you may pay, but you cannot be bound, or you cannot made bound rather, to pay taxes for the promotion of any religion, though India is a land of diversity. Then under Article 28, that is prohibits religious instructions. Nowadays a rampant campaign is going on that the madrasas were not allowed to provide the, that is your Muslims instructions or religious instructions in their institutions. That is prohibition of the instructions on any educational institutions regarding any particular religion. That may be Hindu, or that may be the Muslim, or that may be the Christians. Whatever it may be, we cannot provide, or the Constitution of India cannot provide, or they prohibits religious instruction in any educational institutions, as they are maintained out of central or state fund, partly or wholly, whatever it may be. Then is your Article 5 of the Constitution, so that is fundamental right, that is cultural and educational right, under Article 29 and 30. Article 29 says that right to conserve script language, of the different community, because as you know India is a land of diversity, so different languages, cultures, different community, they have their own culture, own traditions, they have to conserve, they have to maintain their script. That means different people of different parts of India, they have their own languages, own script, and they have their right to protect their scripts, they have to right to protect their language, and they have to give protection under Article 29. Then under Article 30, all minority have right to establish and administer educational institutions of their own choice. That means these minority people, whatever you may say, the minority classes, the Muslim classes, the Buddhist classes, or the any minority, they have their right to establish and administer educational institution of their own choice. As you see today, the institution like Sishu Mandirs is running, the institution like different madrasas were running. So this is due to the principle of laid down in the under Article 30 of the Constitution of India, that is all minority have the right to establish and administer educational institution of their own choice. Then under Article 32 of the Indian Constitution, the constitutional remedy comes, right to constitutional remedy, and here the people of India or the Constitution of India have certain provision which gives powers to the court to enforce the fundamental right, or there are certain devices through which the court protects fundamental right, are known as the judicial process, or in the nature of writs, that is writs in the nature of habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, quo warranto, and certiorari. These are the some of the form under which the court have the right to that is your protect the rights of the individual under Article 32 of the Constitution. That means under Article 32, if there is any violations, then we can move directly to the Supreme Court of India under Article 32 and under Article 226 of the Constitution. We can move the High Court, any of the High Court, directly without going to the any lower court for the implementation. So what are these? The habeas corpus. Habeas corpus means you may have the body. So that means it is issued by the court to an authority denied a person without trial to produce him in the court for trial. That means within the arrest or arrest, or that is the time of arrest. That means the court has the power to issue orders in the name of the, that is your habeas corpus, and the person has to that is your put forth for the trial within 24 hours of his arrest. And if the person is not found guilty, then the court can make free a person, or he or she may be freed, and deny the illegal disobedience to the writ and meet with punishment for the contempt of the court. So I mean to say that here in the name of the habeas corpus, court has the right to issue the orders. That means they have to produce with a nearest magistrate or in nearest court within 24 hours, and the trial is going on, and if the person is found not guilty, then he will be released after the trial is going on. Then mandamus. Mandamus means it is order issued by the authority or person to do duty to mandate by law. That means habeas corpus माने होची देखो माने विभिन्न जगह रे कोन हुए ओडिया रे मु को देउची टिके जे unlawful arrest were made. So at that time it is the duty of the court, it is the duty of the arresting authority to produce that person with a nearest magistrate within 24 hours of the arrest and try to establish his guilty. If he is found not guilty, then he will be free. Bujhiyala? That is called habeas corpus. Then mandamus. Mandamus, that means it is an order issued by the Supreme Court, an authority or a person to do the duty. That means person to do his duty mandated to it by law, which is refused to perform. That means तुमको गोटे काम दिया and you are not doing your duty. That is at that time the that is your court has the right to issue the writs of mandamus and to perform his duty. But in case of the President of India, governor, it cannot be implemented, or the judges of the Supreme Court, it cannot be implemented. Next is your prohibition. That means writs of prohibition. That means the Supreme Court or the High Court or prohibit a inferior court. That means the prohibition or the writ of prohibition issued against lower court, that not it is not come under your supervision, or the High Court has the power to issue the orders of prohibitions. That means it prohibits the lower court from continuing proceedings to the hear a case which was beyond its jurisdiction. Say for an example, कोनोसी jurisdictions बाहरे जदि कोनोसी गुटे कोर्ट लोअर कोर्ट ताकू जदि हियरिंग करूची ताकू कोन कराइबो, हाई कोर्ट has the power to give directions in the matter of prohibitions, and this is not come under your supervision. That is the reason why you cannot be able to make hearing on that particular case. That is called the prohibition. That means prohibits is lower court to perform his act. Then certiorari. The writ of certiorari or Supreme Court may call for the record. That means call for that is your case of record from the lower court to semi-judicial body and allegation of an excess of jurisdictions. Say for an example, certiorari means this is a writ of the Supreme Court, and the High Court may call for the record of a case from lower court or semi-judicial body. Lower court record ta anibata. That is called the writ issued by the certiorari. Say for an example, a case is going on in lower court and you are applied for in your High Court, then High Court has the power to issue writs in the matter of certiorari and call the record from the lower court. This is the writ of certiorari. Then quo warranto. Quo warranto means the writ asks a person or body of person under which authority or it is in a public office created by the constitution or a statute. That means this writ or the court asks a person or body of person under which authority it is in a public office created by the constitution. That means in the name of the warrant also writs are issued by the Supreme Court of India to perform the duty. Next point of our discussion is the basic structure or the doctrine of the basic structure. These rights are fundamental in the nature, and the basic structure, the principle or the word basic structure comes for the first time in the Kesavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala in the year 1973. What happened? In the Supreme Court, Kesavananda Bharati case versus State of Kerala, what happened? The Kesavananda Bharati is a leader of Kerala and challenged the Supreme Court decision that Kerala government about taking over the private land and a part of land reforms program. That means that is the basic structure of the constitution. Basic fundamental rights are comes under the basic structure of the constitution. That is means Supreme Court declared that the amendment to the Constitution of India should not be possible, which should come under the basic structure of the constitution, and fundamental rights are the basic structure of the constitution. It was stated clear-cutly in the Kesavananda Bharati case versus State of Kerala in the year 1973. And that is your again, that is your also one of the case, that is Golaknath versus State of Punjab. It is also one of the important case which also justify the basic structure of the or the doctrine of the basic structure of the constitution. Then next point is restriction on the fundamental right. As I have already told you that no doubt fundamental rights are fundamental to the governance of the people of India, but there are certain restrictions put forth. Say for an example, now that is your pandemic is going on in India and rampant growth in the COVID situation is going on. Nowadays, can you move freely throughout the territory of India? Today is weekend shutdown. Can you move freely in any part of the territory of India with your bike? It cannot. That means which that is your goes against the principle of your freedom. But though it is fundamental in nature, still there are certain restrictions restrictions on the right to freedom, for the protection of the sovereignty, for the protection of the security region, for the maintenance of public order. Public order means what happened? That is peace and tranquility. That means by means of imposing curfew, by means of maintaining friendly relations with the other country, some orders are to be issued by the states or government of India. So at that time, our fundamental rights were curtailed. Then, while that is your emergency provision which is declared, at that time also fundamental rights were curtailed. So these are some of the restrictions which are put forth in front of the that is your fundamental rights, or that is your while enjoying the fundamental rights. So whatever it may be, at last we may conclude that the fundamental rights are fundamental in nature, and these are provided in the that is your part 3rd of the Indian constitutions, and these fundamental rights were necessary for the development of the Indian individual personality. Why these are necessary for the development of the individual personality? The reason is that without fundamental rights, the individual or the personality of the individual, as you know, man is not at all a static animal. The nature of the human being is always dynamic, parivartanshila. That is the reason why fundamental rights are necessary for the governance of the people of the country, because we have to enjoy certain rights. And in next chapter, that is your in 6th chapter, you found there are certain also fundamental duty in the nature of fundamental duty. So today we shall discuss about, already we have discussed about the fundamental rights, and there are some constraint of time. ଆଉ 2 minute କି 3 minute ଅଛି, ବୁଝି ପାରୁଛ ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ଗୁଡାକ ଯାହା କୁହା ହଉଛି?
ଆଜ୍ଞା ସାର୍।
ବୁଝି ହଉଛି ତ? ତାହେଲେ ଟାଇମ ତ ନାହିଁ, ଆଉ କଣ କରିବା, ନହେଲେ ଆଉ 2ଟା ଚ୍ୟାପ୍ଟର ତୁମ ରହିଗଲା, that is your directive principle of state policy and fundamental duty. ମୁଁ ଟିକେ ଟିକେ କହି ଦଉଛି, ମାନେ ଡାଇରେକ୍ଟିଭ ପ୍ରିନ୍ସିପଲ ଅଫ ଷ୍ଟେଟ ପଲିସି କଣ, ଆଉ that is your fundamental duty ଟା କଣ, ଓଭରଅଲ ଟିକେ କହି ଦଉଛି, ପଏଣ୍ଟ ଗୁଡାକୁ ଯାଉନି ହେଲା, କାହିଁକି ନା ଟାଇମ ନାହିଁ ଆଉ। ଡାଇରେକ୍ଟିଭ ପ୍ରିନ୍ସିପଲ ଅଫ ଷ୍ଟେଟ ପଲିସି, ମୁଁ ଆଉ ସେ ପଏଣ୍ଟ କୁ ଯାଉନି ହେଲା, ଏମିତି କହି ଦଉଛି। Fundamental right are fundamental in nature, but directive principle are not fundamental in nature, and they are provided in the part 4th of the Indian Constitution, and they are non-justiciable in the court of law. The directive principle of state policy are non-justiciable in the court of law. That means if anybody violates the principle of the directive principle of state policy, then we should not move any court for its implementation. ताकू लागू करिवा पई आमे कोनोसी जगह को जाई परिबा नहीं, किबा कोर्ट को जाई परिबा नहीं, particularly कहली. That is the basic difference between the fundamental rights and the directive principle of state policy. And due to the welfare nature of the state, nowadays the different programs were adopted by the government of India for the development of the individual. No doubt they are not non-justiciable in the court of law. Till then, these programs through various before Niti Aayog it was planning commissions, and now it is Niti Aayog, different programs like your Food Security Act, NREGA, National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, then is your MGNREGA, Mahatma Gandhi Karma Niyukti Yojana, then is your NRHM, National Rural Health Missions. Different programs were undertaken by the government for the development of the individual personacy. But it cannot be, if this cannot be provided. Say for an example, आज तुम्हें देखो जे कौन जे नहीं जातीय खाद्य सुरक्षा नीति नेशनल फूड सिक्योरिटी एक्ट अनुଯାयी लोक माननकु 5 किलो चाउल दिया जाउची. जदि सेटा गवर्नमेंट प्रोवाइड न करे, we cannot move to the court of law for its implementation. Would you follow my point or not? बुझी होची?
ଆଜ୍ଞା ସାର୍।
से जिनस गुड़ा को कौन कह that principles are incorporated in the, that is your directive principle of state policy, and it was incorporated in the from article 36 to 51 under part 4th of the Indian Constitution. And no doubt fundamental rights are negative in nature, negative in character, but directive principle of state policy are positive in character. That means in case of fundamental right, it is, or the certain restrictions are provided not to do certain things by to the state. राष्ट्र को किसी जिनस न करिबा पई बारण करा जायछि फंडामेंटल राइट रे. that is the reason why it is stated that it was negative in character or nature, but directive principle of state policy is positive in nature. Positive in the sense that here the different principle enumerated in the directive principle of state policy were meant for the development of the society. The developmental activity will take place. That is Panchayat Raj system. Then that is your, you may say that is your implementation of the different 5-year plan, implementation of different programs for the development of the community of India, different communities. This is positive aspects. So this is comes from the directive principle of state policy. But for the violation of the directive principle of state policy, as you have the right to move directly to the Supreme Court under Article 32 and under Article 226 of High Court for the implementation of your fundamental right, but you cannot move to the court any principle which are violated by the of the directive principle of state policy. Okay, then there is, that is your fundamental duty. I am very shortly coming fundamental duty discuss କରି ଦଉଛି କାହିଁକି ନା ଗୋଟେ ଜିନିଷ ରହିଯିବ କାହିଁକି ତାକୁ discussion କରିଦେବା the fundamental duty means while enjoying this is also unjusticiable in the court of law and enumerated in the part 4 of the constitution and there are fundamental duties because rights and duties are correlated. This is just like two sides of the same coin because if we are at the same time claiming some rights then we have to perform certain duties. So that is the reason why it is stated as fundamental duty, but this is not fundamental and fundamental duty are incorporated in the article 51A part 4A of the Constitution of India. And there are 10 fundamental duties which if you read this your study material you have know about all these things, and under this we have to perform certain fundamental duty and at the same time we have state has the right to provide certain rights to the people. And that's all for the today's discussion, and I have completed the block 1 and in next class we have to discuss the block 2. Okay, thank you.
सर गोटे प्रश्न थिला सर काली से मैम को क्लास
कौन
थिला कि
कहले?
नहीं टिके मु सर जानि पन टिके
ठीक से कहतु शुभुनी
सर काली जो महाराणा मैम को जो क्लास थिला कि नहीं टिके मु जानि पारि कि सर काली मु वेट करली कि क्लास के रेस्पॉन्स नथिला काली 4 रु 5 टा
काली काली क्लास थिला ना थिला र देखि माने काली से अन्य मैडम रो भी क्लास थिला काली
टाइम चेंज थिला सर काली
21 तारीख ना सॉरी
23 थिला काली
23 तारीख थिला ना काली क्लास थिला ना
हाँ
सर जो हमको जो ईमेल रे जो सिलेबस जो रूटीन टा मिली छी सही कोड टा मु अप्लाई करले हेला नहीं सर यदि टाइम चेंज हो जो जानि सर
तुम लिंक टा क्लिक करबो ना आरो लिंक टा क्लिक करे आसीथिबो ना
नहीं सर हेला नहीं तो काली सर
हेला नहीं की
नहीं
तो
काली
सर
टिके
आई डोंट हैव एनी आईडिया हेला हेई नहीं जानि हेला हेबा कथा किंतु रूटीन रे अछि जा अछि मेंशन करा
नहीं 4 रु 5 सर हेई नथिला सर
अच्छा अच्छा अच्छा
सर टाइम चेंज हेतला
4:30 रो हेतला टाइम चेंज हेतला 4:30 तो काली भी कहउछंते कि 4:30 रो होबो
अच्छा मु मैम को मैसेज करली आगे थैंक यू सर अच्छा से मैम मते कल रिप्लाई देलेनी मु तंगु रिप्लाई करली से मैम रिप्लाई भी देलेनी काली मते तंग कॉल करे पड़ियो
4:30 ରୁ 5:30 क्लास हेतला
अच्छा 4:30 रु इतला हो